The chandelier light bounced off crystal glasses, casting sharp glints across the packed ballroom. Washington's elite, dressed in stiff suits and glittering gowns, buzzed with murmurs at the annual Education Future Fundraiser. The air smelled of expensive perfume and ambition. At the center of the room, a podium stood ready for speeches, but the real show was brewing near the bar, where Karoline Leavitt, press secretary for a rising senator, locked eyes with Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Karoline, her blonde hair pulled tight, clutched a glass of wine she hadn't sipped. Her sharp jaw twitched as she spotted Jasmine across the crowd. The Congresswoman, in a bold red dress, laughed with a group of donors, her voice carrying over the string quartet. Karoline's stomach churned. Jasmine had spent weeks slamming the new education reform bill, a law Karoline's boss championed. The bill promised private school vouchers but slashed public school budgets, especially in Jasmine's district. To Karoline, it was a bold step forward. To Jasmine, it was a betrayal of kids who couldn't afford fancy schools. Karoline pushed. Through the crowd, her heels clicking like a countdown. She'd heard Jasmine's speeches, all fiery passion and biting wit, tearing into the bill on the House floor. Tonight, Karoline wanted blood. She'd prove Jasmine was just a loudmouth with no real answers. As she neared, Jasmine's laugh faltered. The Congresswoman turned, her eyes narrowing like a hawk spotting prey. "Well, look who's here," Jasmine said, her voice low but slicing through the chatter. "The senator's little messenger, come to sell us more lies." Karoline's lips curled into a sneer. "At least I'm not screaming nonsense to scare poor families into voting for you. That bill's their ticket out of failing schools." The donors around them froze, sensing a storm. Jasmine stepped closer, her perfume sharp as her tone. "Ticket? You're stealing their school's funding to hand rich kids a free ride. You think I won't call that out?" Karoline laughed, cold and sharp. "Call it out? You're just yelling to hear your own voice. Step up or step aside, Congresswoman." The room seemed to shrink, the crowd's whispers growing louder. A waiter hesitated nearby, unsure whether to offer drinks or flee. Jasmine's face tightened, her eyes burning with fury. "You're a child playing tough, Karoline. You don't know what it's like to fight for people who've got nothing. And you're a has-been clinging to power," Karoline shot back, her voice rising. "Your district's schools are a mess because you've failed them for years." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A man in a tuxedo dropped his fork, the clatter loud in the sudden hush. Jasmine's hand twitched, as if she might throw her drink. Instead, she leaned in, her words venomous. "You want to dance, little girl? I'll bury you right here." Karoline didn't flinch. She'd come to start a fight, and Jasmine was giving her one. "Try it," she hissed. "Show everyone how weak you really are." The tension crackled like a live wire. Donors edged closer, phones slipping out to record. The fundraiser's polite mask had shattered, and the room pulsed with raw hostility. Jasmine straightened, her smile dangerous. "Oh, I'm just getting started," she said, her voice a promise of war. The ballroom's golden glow seemed to dim as Jasmine Crockett's words hung in the air, sharp as a blade. The crowd pressed in, their murmurs a low hum of anticipation. Karoline Leavitt stood her ground, her blue eyes glinting with defiance. She'd thrown the first punch, but Jasmine's threat promised a brawl, and Karoline was ready to swing again. The education reform bill, the spark of their feud, wasn't just policy now, it was personal. Jasmine tilted her head, her red dress catching the light like a warning flare. "You think you can waltz in here, spit insults, and walk away clean?" she said, her voice smooth but laced with rage. "I've fought bigger sharks than you, and they're all at the bottom of the tank." Karoline's laugh was brittle, cutting through the tension. "Sharks? You're more like a loud fish, flopping around for attention. Your district's kids deserve better than your excuses." The crowd sucked in a collective breath. A woman in pearls clutched her husband's arm, whispering furiously. Jasmine's smile vanished, replaced by a scowl that could curdle wine. She stepped forward, closing the gap until they were inches apart. "You don't get to talk about my kids," she snarled. "You sit in your fancy office, typing lies for your boss, while I'm in the trenches, cleaning up your mess." Karoline's cheeks flushed, but her voice stayed icy. "Trenches? You're digging graves for those schools. The bill gives families a choice, but you're too stubborn to see it." "Choice?" Jasmine's voice rose, booming over the quartet's fading notes. "You're robbing them blind to fund private schools for rich brats. You call that fair?" The accusation landed like a slap. Karoline's fingers tightened around her glass, her knuckles white. "Fair? Nothing's fair when you've let those schools rot for decades. Step up or get out of the way." A man nearby coughed, trying to break the spell, but no one moved. The air was thick, charged with the promise of more venom. Jasmine's eyes flicked over Karoline, sizing her up like a boxer before a knockout. "You're all talk, press secretary," she said, her tone mocking. "You hide behind your senator's name, but out here, you're just a kid who's in over her head." Karoline's jaw clenched. She leaned in, her voice a low hiss. "And you're a washed-up politician who's scared of change. Keep shouting, Jasmine. It won't save you." The crowd buzzed, phones held high, capturing every word. A donor in a bow tie muttered about calling security, but no one dared interrupt. Jasmine's laugh was sharp, like glass breaking. "Save me? Honey, I'm not the one drowning. You picked this fight, but you're about to choke on it." Karoline's pulse pounded in her ears. She wanted to wipe that smug look off Jasmine's face, to prove she wasn't just some senator's mouthpiece. "Keep dreaming," she shot back. "I'll tear your whole act apart, and everyone here will see you. For the fraud you are." Jasmine's eyes blazed, but her voice dropped, deadly calm. "Fraud? Oh, you're about to learn what real is, Karoline. Right here, right now." The words were a gauntlet thrown down, and the room seemed to hold its breath. The donors, the waiters, even the quartet, all eyes were on the two women, locked in a battle neither would back down from. Karoline's heart raced, but she wouldn't blink first. Jasmine's stance, unyielding and fierce, promised a reckoning that would shake the room. The ballroom's air grew heavy, thick with the scent of wine and tension. The crowd formed a loose circle around Karoline Leavitt and Jasmine Crockett, their phones glowing like fireflies in the dim light. The string quartet had given up, their bows still, as every ear strained to catch the next barb. Jasmine's last words, a cold promise of truth, hung between them, daring Karoline to strike. Back, the education reform bill, their battleground, had turned this fundraiser into a gladiator's arena. Karoline's lips twitched into a smirk, but her eyes burned with fury. She wouldn't let Jasmine's taunt slide. "Real?" she spat, her voice sharp enough to cut steel. "The only thing real here is your failure. You've had years to fix those schools, and they're worse than ever. Don't blame me for your mess." Jasmine's laugh was low, dangerous, like thunder rolling in. She crossed her arms, her red dress a stark contrast to the pale faces around her. "Mess? You're the one pushing a bill that starves kids' futures to feed your boss's ego. You think I'll let you prance in here and spit on my people?" The crowd murmured, some nodding, others shifting uncomfortably. Karoline's face tightened, her voice rising to a sneer. "Your people? You're not their hero, Jasmine. You're a loud bully who's scared of progress. That bill's their lifeline, and you're cutting it." Jasmine stepped closer, her heels clicking like a judge's gavel. "Lifeline? You're handing out crumbs and calling it a feast. I know your game, Karoline. You and your senator want votes, not solutions." The accusation stung, and Karoline's eyes flashed. She leaned forward, her voice a venomous whisper. "And you want power, Congresswoman. You'll scream about kids while their schools crumble, just to keep your seat warm." A woman in a sequined gown gasped, clutching her necklace. The donors exchanged glances, torn between shock and thrill. Jasmine's face hardened, her voice dropping to a growl. "You've got a big mouth for someone who's never fought for anything. I've bled for my district. What have you done, besides kiss? Up to power?" Karoline's hands balled into fists, her nails digging into her palms. "I'm fighting for families who want better than your broken promises." "You're not a fighter, Jasmine. You're a coward hiding behind noise." The word coward hit like a spark in dry grass. Jasmine's eyes widened, then narrowed to slits. "Coward!" she hissed, her voice trembling with rage. "I've faced down bigger snakes than you and walked away smiling. You're nothing but a mouthpiece with a fancy title." Karoline laughed, but it was hollow, edged with spite. "Smiling? You're shaking, Jasmine. You know I'm right, and it's eating you alive." The crowd was a living thing now, pulsing with every word. A waiter backed away, his tray rattling. Jasmine's lips curled into a sneer, her voice cutting through the din. "Shaking? I'm standing tall, ready to knock you down. You want to talk truth? Let's talk about your senator's donors, getting rich off this bill while my schools starve." Karoline froze, her breath catching. The crowd leaned in, sensing blood. Jasmine pressed her advantage, her voice a blade. "That's right. You thought I wouldn't know? I see through you, Karoline, and I'm not afraid to say it." The room seemed to tilt, the stakes higher than ever. Karoline's heart pounded, but she wouldn't crumble. She straightened, her voice steady despite the fire in her chest. "You're grasping, Jasmine. Throw dirt all you want. It won't. Hide your failures." Jasmine's smile was pure steel. "Keep talking, press secretary. I'm about to show everyone what you're really made of." The ballroom's crystal chandeliers flickered, casting jagged shadows over the crowd. Now a tight knot of wide-eyed donors and whispering aides. The air crackled with raw hostility, every breath charged as Jasmine Crockett's accusation about corrupt donors hung like smoke. Karoline Leavitt's face was a mask of fury, her blonde hair glinting as she squared her shoulders. Jasmine's words had drawn blood, but Karoline wasn't done. She'd come to win, and the education reform bill was her sword. "You're desperate," Karoline snapped, her voice a whip crack that silenced the murmurs. "Throwing lies about donors because you've got nothing left. Your schools are failing, Jasmine, and you're too weak to fix them." Jasmine's eyes blazed, her red dress a beacon of defiance in the sea of muted suits. She planted her hands on her hips, her voice booming like a preacher's. "Weak? I'm strong enough to call out your filthy game. Your bill's a cash grab for private schools, and you know it. You're not fooling anyone here." The crowd shifted, some nodding, others clutching drinks like lifelines. Karoline's laugh was sharp, a blade slicing through the tension. "Fooling? Look in the mirror, Congresswoman. You've been conning your district for years, promising hope while delivering nothing." Jasmine's face twisted, her voice a low snarl. "Conning? I've carried my people through storms you can't imagine. You're just a slick talker, Karoline, selling out kids for a pat on the head from your boss." Karoline's chest heaved, her eyes narrowing to slits. "And you're a relic, Jasmine, stuck in the past, dragging everyone down with you. That bill's the future, and you're too blind to see it." The words landed like a punch, and the crowd gasped, phones trembling, in eager hands. A man in a velvet jacket muttered about decorum, but no one listened. Jasmine's laugh was cold, cutting through the din like a winter wind. "Blind? I see you clear as day, press secretary. You're all polish, no substance, and I'm about to prove it." Karoline stepped closer, her voice dripping with scorn. "Prove it. You're all hot air, Congresswoman. You can't back up a single word you've said." The challenge hung heavy, and Jasmine's smile was a predator's grin. She turned to the crowd, her voice rising, commanding every ear. "You hear that, folks? She thinks I can't back it up. Let me tell you about this bill she loves. It cuts funding for teachers, for books, for desks, all to line the pockets of private school owners. And she calls that progress? The crowd erupted in murmurs, some clapping, others shaking their heads. Karoline's face flushed, her voice a hiss. That's a lie, and you know it. The bill gives parents options, something you've never bothered to do. Jasmine spun back, her eyes locking onto Karoline's. Options? You're giving them empty promises while my schools bleed. I've got the numbers, Karoline. Your bill slashes $20 million from my district alone. You want to talk about that? Karoline faltered just for a second, her lips parting but no words coming. The crowd noticed, their whispers growing louder. Jasmine pressed forward, her voice relentless. That's right. You didn't think I'd bring receipts. I've read every line of your precious bill, and it's a disgrace. You're not fighting for kids. You're fighting for yourself. Karoline's hands shook, but she forced a sneer. You're twisting the truth, Jasmine. Keep spinning your stories. They won't save you when everyone sees you've got nothing. Jasmine's eyes gleamed, her voice a quiet, deadly promise. Oh, I've got plenty, Karoline, and I'm about to lay it all bare. The ballroom pulsed with raw energy, the crowd a restless tide of whispers and flashing phones. The chandeliers above seemed to flicker in time with the pounding hearts below. Jasmine Crockett stood tall, her red dress aflame against the muted opulence, her eyes boring into Karoline Leavitt. The press secretary's face was pale, her sneer faltering under the weight of Jasmine's last words. The education reform bill, once Karoline's weapon, now felt like a trap, and Jasmine was closing in for the kill. You think you can hide? Jasmine's voice was steady, a hammer striking stone. You thought you'd come here, throw insults, and walk away clean? Not tonight, Karoline. Not with me. Karoline's lips trembled, but she forced a laugh, thin and brittle. You're bluffing, Jasmine. All you've got is noise. No one's buying your act. The crowd stirred, some leaning forward, others exchanging skeptical glances. Jasmine's smile was sharp, a blade honed by years of battle. She raised a hand, silencing the murmurs with a single gesture. Noise? Let's talk facts, then. Your bill's budget cuts hit poorest schools hardest. I've got letters from teachers, parents, kids, begging for help. You want to hear one? Karoline's eyes widened, her voice a hiss. You're making this up. You've got nothing but sob stories. Jasmine's laugh was rich, defiant, filling the room. Sob stories? These are lives, Karoline. Real people you're hurting. I met a teacher last week, 30 years in the classroom, crying because her school can't afford books. Your bill takes her job next. You call that a story? The crowd gasped, a wave of shock rippling through the donors. A woman in a silk shawl dabbed her eyes, while a man in a pinstripe suit nodded slowly. Karoline's hands clenched, her voice rising in desperation. You're twisting everything. The bill helps families choose better schools. You're just scared of change. Jasmine stepped forward, her presence commanding, unyielding. Scared? I'm fighting for kids who can't fight for themselves. You're the one running, hiding behind your senator's lies. Tell me, Karoline, did you even read the bill you're selling? The question landed like a thunderclap. Karoline's mouth opened, then closed, her face flushing crimson. The crowd's whispers grew louder, a chorus of doubt. Jasmine pressed on, her voice a relentless tide. That's what I thought. You're out here shouting, but you don't know the damage you're doing. I do, and I'll scream it until everyone hears. Karoline's voice cracked, her words tumbling out. You're a fraud, Jasmine. You failed your district, and you're blaming me to save yourself. Jasmine's eyes softened for a moment, not with weakness, but with pity. Then her voice roared, filling every corner of the room. Failed? I've carried my people through worse than you'll ever know. You came here to tear me down, but you're the one breaking. Look around, Karoline. They see you now. The crowd erupted, clapping, some cheering, others murmuring in agreement. Karoline's shoulders slumped, her eyes darting to the faces around her, donors turning away, aides shaking their heads. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Jasmine stood unwavering, her voice dropping to a fierce whisper. "Go back to your office, press secretary. This fight's too big for you." Karoline stumbled back, her heel catching on the carpet. She turned, pushing through the crowd, her face burning with defeat. The donors parted, their applause for Jasmine growing louder, a wave of triumph. Jasmine raised her chin, her eyes blazing with victory, not just for herself, but for every teacher, parent, and child she'd fought for. The ballroom shook with the sound of her win, a moment no one would forget.